Good morning, everybody. So after having worked at the same educational institution for over the past 20 years, I certainly have seen and experienced many things. I have some immediate takeaways that are glaringly apparent to me and to anybody who really knows me. The first part is I've aged. You might say that I've done so well, but my creaky knees and ankles and my graying hair tell me otherwise. I've also changed immeasurably. I'm no longer that eager professor hell-bent on making sure that every student who walked into my class has been sprinkled with the pixie dust of critical thinking, humanity, and infinite wisdom. And while indeed that may have happened for some of the young folks who passed through my universe, for the last decade or so, I've been a full-time administrator concerned with the mission and objective of the institution, trying to make sure that as many students as possible graduate with all their fingers and toes intact, unscarred by their experience with us, and ready to take on the world that is as unforgiving as it has ever been. Over that time, I've seen said institution grow and change and be transformed into a high-quality metropolitan university that has left an indelible mark on Omaha and the thousands of students, families, and the communities that it serves. To have had a hand in that process is certainly gratifying, and it leaves me with a sense of accomplishment that I will wear with great pride as I venture off to Texas. And for the past few months, because I am leaving, this has compelled me to pause and to take stock of what it means to me, and what it means for my role in higher education, and what it means to the people that we have chosen to serve. Especially now as we celebrate the close of another cycle and the accomplishments of students and their families who have indeed made the grade and are advancing, moving forward and graduating to that next stage in life's journey. So to that end, here are some of the lessons learned from that experience. First, I have been blessed, and to that end, I'm exceedingly privileged. I'm privileged by virtue of title, of my socioeconomic stature, my access to power with my own seat at the table. And indeed, I've worked hard and I've earned it. But today in life's context is vastly different from those who I share deep affinities, values, and common history, my fellow Latinos. The only difference between me and them is time and circumstance. I see myself every day in the young immigrant dressed only in a hoodie, walking in the bitter cold to a third shift on the meat packing killing floor, all to put food on the table for him and his family. And as much as I identify with him as I do with my colleagues at the university who are much more concerned with getting their research published and meeting the challenge of tenure so that they might too secure their station in the higher ed hierarchy. I've learned that being in education is the sincerest act of faith, that despite all the conditions and predictors to the contrary, the folks whose lives we touch do indeed flourish given the right conditions. Remember that the master gardener never blames the seed. Like the song by Tupac Shakur, "The Rose That Grew from Concrete," Tupac says, "Did you hear about the rose that grew from the crack in the concrete, proving nature's laws wrong? It learned to walk without having feet. Funny it seems, but by keeping its dreams, it learned how to breathe fresh air." And still there is much letdown, failure, and disappointment for many of the people that we serve, mostly because of matters having nothing to do with academic ability or desire, be they of privilege or not. As such, I am always amazed then, years later, after the fact, when a former student approaches you and regales you with a tale of success and accomplishment. It makes one's heart sing with pride, and your eyes well up with affection, knowing that somehow you made a difference. And those among us who work in that P-12 reality do not do it for the money. Just ask them. On average in Nebraska, when broken down to an hourly wage, a teacher in Nebraska today makes approximately $12.30 an hour. That is not much better than the $10.80 someone makes working McDonald's. This is deplorable when we consider that society relies heavily on teachers for the shaping and preparation of the next generation of individuals that we will count on to serve us at every critical juncture in society, to provide us for everything in which we depend on to make sure that we can all live lives of fulfillment, safety, and stability. Therefore, in our civil society, education is and should be considered a public good, part of the social contract to which we ostensibly aspire to fulfill. They, our teachers, are responsible for the edification of the mind and the inculcation of values to ensure that this is something more than just a promissory note. And yet, as public education seeks to fulfill this awesome obligation, there are those who bristle at any attempt to expand the ambit, to grow the pie of life's opportunities, and to provide a more inclusive platform so that every single person can somehow derive benefit from an enterprise that holds the promise of enhancement and transformation, as it has directly for my family and so many others like us. Teachers have no promise that this will ever come to pass, and yet they persist. They get up and they face the day with an optimism and a zeal that I marvel at when I'm in their presence. So much so that I find myself somewhat ashamed that sometimes all I can offer is an attaboy or an attagirl card, a cup of coffee and markers, when I know they are worthy of so much more and do even more. Far too often making something from nothing, doing it unflappably and with aplomb. This is important in a world in which we live today, at a time when mass murder, like yesterday, is so commonplace, where sexual predation passes as a virtue, where abjectly false political propaganda is passed off as truth, and where self-aggrandizement somehow or another became viewed as a positive attribute. It makes it hard to find the good and raise it up and to be grateful for it. This is especially true when we are unwilling and unconsciously forced to shoulder the burden of confronting and battling the cavalcade of false charges and misrepresentations maliciously calculated to harm us and others, and to which we are subjected and sometimes victimized by. It makes it very hard to be grateful. It is here where teachers, their faith in the process of educating and nurturing the minds and souls of our children, where they stand up as that line of defense, the bulwark against the forces of division and derision that are all too common today. For that all, we should be exceedingly grateful. It's in those small, grateful acts that they do every day that can uplift us, that do make that difference for others and help to change the world. Lastly, for those of you who are moving on to the next grade, we're happy that your journey continues to move forward. To the high school graduates, we're exceedingly proud that you've met the challenge of this rite of passage. We are hopeful that you will continue to be successful in all your pursuits, no matter where they take you. For those of you who graduated from undergraduate colleges and universities, know that you are now part of that 37.5% of the population that has a college degree. That is not inconsequential. Although it is not guaranteed, this offers you access to opportunities in life that would still be masked to you had you not undertaken the challenge of pursuing a degree. Reflect upon that, relish the skills, the competencies, and the knowledge that you have accumulated on this part of your journey, and utilize it to propel yourself forward. To those of you who graduated from postgraduate medical and professional schools, you're now part of an even smaller group, only 15% of the American population that holds those degrees. If you happen to have a medical or law degree, 0.5, a PhD, 1%. This makes you part of a privileged few in American society of what really is our leadership class. Be wise stewards of all that this affords you and maximize it for good. We are very happy and proud of all these accomplishments. But the question is, and has always been, what will you do with this remarkable gift of all the privileges, rights, responsibilities, and obligations that this implies? Remember, to those who are given much, much is required. Therefore, that's why we call it commencement. You are now just beginning. We can't wait to see what great things you're going to do. Finally, I'm going to close with my favorite James Baldwin quote. Not everything is lost responsibility. Responsibility cannot be lost. It can only be abdicated. If one refuses abdication, we can begin again. This means that every day we can go back and do it over. We can kickstart, we can reboot, jigger, reimagine, and run it all back. And it matters very little what came before us, if we undertake this effort with healthy doses of humility, empathy, compassion, and faith. May it be so. Amen.